how to cheat on the test, how one local podcast can build your network and your net worth. And this podcast is a recording from the BrokerTalks that I shared at a recent event that we did. And it basically talks about how you can create this really simple podcast in order to scale and build a mortgage business. Hey, I'm Scott Beckford. This is the I Love Mortgage Brokering podcast. And my whole goal with this is to share with you tools, tactics, and ideas to improve your business. Before we jump into this, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Omwell. Omwell is an amazing tool for Canadian brokers to engage your database. Got 60 to 7% open rate, sends these monthly reports with buying power in their home equity, and which is awesome for the client. But for you as the broker, what's awesome is it actually does the math on the files and the mortgages in your database and finds opportunities to refinance. So if somebody can save by breaking their mortgage early, save 50 or 20 grand, it's going to tell you, and then it gives you the scripting to be able to send to that client. It's very powerful. Check them out at omwell.ca and check out this episode. So let me tell you guys a quick story. Several years ago, I was at home. I was working on dinner, and my youngest daughter comes home, getting really sad. She's got the down shoulders. She's just like, oh, little cute little face, little backpack on. I'm like, honey, what's going on? And she looked like our dog died. She goes, Dad, I'm not very good at math. And I'm like, honey, well, why do you say that? And she's like, well, I studied, and I studied really hard. I didn't do very good. So I reached down, I grabbed by her shoulders, I looked her in the eyes and said, honey, why didn't you cheat on the test? And she's like, Daddy, you can't cheat on the test. I said, no, you can't in school. But when you get older, not only should you can, but you should absolutely cheat on every test you can. And so I believe that one of the problems like that with kids in school is we have to do everything ourselves. Nowadays, I believe in just copying what works and applying it. So fast forward to, I'm going to talk about how to create a local podcast in one afternoon a week. I'm going to share with you the tools, how to map this. So I talked about this at the EXP conference. And I'm going to share with you ideas around this. I've had a podcast since 2014 before it was cool. And it's changed my whole life. Like a lot of you here, you wouldn't even be here if there wasn't a podcast. Let's be real. You wouldn't know who I am. And so there's a real power in long form content. There's a lot of content out there right now that's short, 30 seconds. You get awareness, but you're not building the same relationship. And there's a way to do this that you can do both. So my brother, a few years ago, reached out to me and said, Scott, I want to get into the real estate business. And he chose to be a real estate agent, which I was like, dude, like, why a real estate agent? In any case, he decided that's what he wanted to do. I couldn't talk him out of it, but he doesn't like to sit behind a desk. He doesn't like being on the phone. And so I said, well, I don't know how to be a real estate agent, but I do know how to market. And so why don't I show you how to create a podcast? And so we worked together on creating a podcast. I helped him create a podcast called Investing in Calgary Real Estate. And in his first year, he did $28,000 in commission directly from that podcast, which was pretty cool. And it's a small podcast, a couple hundred downloads an episode. But the coolest story was not the 28K. It was when he told me, he goes, Scott, I had a guy reach out to me from Toronto who said he wants to buy property in Calgary. He asked me if I have time to meet with him. My brother had nothing but time. Like, he had nothing going on. And the guy's like, oh, can I meet with you? And so this is the power of long form content building so much trust that this guy is just hoping my brother Corey has time to meet with him. And he did, of course, and sold him a house. He still gets leads from it. So I'm going to walk you through this. And then I had started cheating on the test a long time ago, but the podcast itself came from a thing called I Love Marketing. Who here has heard of that podcast? And just a show of hands. I'm driving out in my car listening to this going, man, why is there not a podcast for mortgage brokers? And what happened was I ended up creating a podcast called I Love Mortgage Brokering. I just literally copied the title. And if you go back to the Wayback Machine, which is an internet basically takes screenshots, everything looked exactly the same. I just copied those guys. And I started it my first month. I did 168 downloads. I think it was mostly my mom just trying to help me out, and completely transformed over the last 12 years. It's transformed my life, the relationships I built, the things I've got to learn, the doors that it's opened for me. And I think that I believe there's a way for you to do this in your local market. And I'm going to talk about that. And I'm also going to talk about if you don't want to do a real estate podcast, if somebody reminds me at the end to ask me what you would do different, because you don't have to talk about mortgages or real estate. I'm going to talk about the 2-show strategy. I'm going to talk about how to execute on it. I'm going to talk about the simple tools that you need and how to do all of it in basically one afternoon a month. And then I'll also share with you how you can cut the cost of it by half and cost of the work in half as well. And I'm going to do all this in 20 minutes or less. So the 2-show strategy. First is you want an interview show to grow your network, and you want a solo show to grow your net worth, because an interview show should be about your guest and it's going to help you grow your reach. And then the solo show shows your expertise, right? If you're just interviewing, you go, yeah, you know your stuff, but I don't know if I trust you yet. And so we're going to do both. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do those things. So let's talk about the interview show first. So the first thing is you want to make the guest the hero. It's not about you. Don't try to outdo them. Oh, you think your story's funny. My story's better. You do that, you're going to create a bad show. You're going to make the guests not want to come back. They're not going to want to introduce you to people. So you want to make them the hero, which means you just set up the questions. For my first 100+ shows, I had the exact same questions for every one of them. If you listen to them, I don't do that anymore because I would be bored. if I kept, like, honestly, I've done it so many times. I'm like, I kind of know what they're going to say. That's not what I do now, but starting out to make it easy. The other thing you can do is send the questions to your guests beforehand. Then they know what they're going to talk about. Now, a little pro tip. Sometimes people who like to prepare, when they get the questions in advance, they'll write out all the answers and then they'll want to read them. That doesn't sound very good. So if they start reading them, no, you're going to have to get them to not read them. Just say, hey, you got your material. This is your stuff. Get them talking. And then that way you build a good rapport with them and it sounds better. So I would use the same 8 to 12 questions. And then there's this trick I learned from Oprah that before you turn on the recorder, you share something vulnerable with the person that you're going to interview. Because guess what happens? If somebody shares something vulnerable with you, what do you tend to do? You reciprocate. You do the same back. You do that beforehand. She would do this on TV, but before the recorder came on, and it would end up getting a better conversation with your guest. So interview shows are a fantastic way to grow your network. And I discovered this because I ended up, when I first got in the mortgage business, I had a radio program on AM 1150. And on that radio show, I was able to get David Chilton, the wealthy barber, on it. I was able to get economists. And I don't know if 5 people listened to that radio station, but it didn't matter because I said, hey, I'm from AM 1150. Will you come on my show with me? And I realized it was a backstage pass. One of my brokers in Vancouver, Alex Pang, they got a small podcast, gets a couple hundred downloads a month. He got David Chilton on his show. Went out and looked up. I said, that's very interesting. He's got this David Chilton on his show because it's niche, not niche. It's niche. And I looked, David Chilton charges $30,000 to talk. If you wanted to have him talk, but he'll go on a podcast because it's a different platform and nobody expects to get paid to be on a podcast because your media is very, very powerful for building your network. I'm going to give you pro tips with each of these. You basically should get all of your first guests, and all of mine came from the first 10 that I knew. Don't worry about trying to get like these David Chilton, these other people on the podcast, because it's going to be very difficult to do to start. And you just start with your network. It's going to be much easier. So start with those 8 to 10 questions you already have. And it's really easy to get questions. Go on ChatGPT and say, this is what I want to do for a podcast. Give me your best questions. Keep refining it. And then, drop it into Claude and get the proper answer. And use LinkedIn DMs. Don't do any of that stuff to start. It's not worth it. I'll also share with you at the end how you can there's a Diary of a CEO hack to get more guests that I'll share with you at the end. So solo shows, keep them short, 8 to 10 minutes. Answer one client objection or story. So if there's a story that comes up with your clients, you can share about, like we have so many of these examples, right? And then this is where you get to shine. When the podcast coach I hired said to me, I got to be honest, when I first started doing solo shows, I was nervous. I'm like, what am I going to talk about for 8 or 10 minutes? I had a bit of a head trip, if I'm being honest with you. But then I started realizing, okay, I just got to talk about stories about things that happen. So you guys, client stories, right? This is a situation that came up. Here's the problem. Here's how we solved it. And that's one of the great things you can do. The other thing you can do with this, your sent folder is a fantastic source of questions. All the questions that any client's going to ask you is in your sent folder, and you go in there and look and go, oh yeah, I forgot about that gun, this one, that one. And then those become the stories you use. And then the last thing is there's 2 ways you can do these solo shows. I don't do newsjacking. Ron Butler does this very well. If anybody follows Ron Butler, he nails newsjacking. It is very good for attention in the short term, but you got to give your opinion. Don't just like say, hey, Bank Canada raised rates, like, which, people do, but it's like, what does that mean? Why do I care? What do you think about that? You've got to have an opinion if you're going to do that. So if you're going to do a news story, right now in Kelowna, Airbnbs were taken away. They're just coming out again, right? So Airbnbs are now coming back in our market. They got rid of 2,000 Airbnbs. That's kind of a big story. So I would record a solo show on what that means. And then anytime a client reaches out about Airbnb, you send them a link to that episode. The beauty of having these podcasts, solo shows, is once you get a bunch of them in there, anytime a client reaches out to you, you send them a link to that episode. They ask a question, you got a recording on it. Hey, here's an 8-minute thing I recorded. But guess what? They're probably not going to listen to just one. And by the time you get on a phone call with them, I swear to you, they're going to feel like they already know you. I remember I'd listened to a podcast and I went to a conference and I saw somebody that I've seen so many times on video. And I felt like running up to them going, hey, wait a second, they don't know who I am. This is awkward, right? But this is what happens with long form content. You build so much trust that when you do start to work with them, it's way easier on you. And so the solo shows are also a great way for you to do that for any existing customers that come in. And it's just something that I think has been very effective. But with the shows, they get the highest, like anything over 75% consumed. So if a show on average is 75% done, that's a good show. Most of the Island Mortgage Brokering ones is 75, 80% on the interview shows. And then the solo shows, most of them are like 95, 100% because they're shorter. People get through them. They build a ton of trust. And then in terms of publishing, what I do, this is not what I recommend you do to start, but I would do an interview show on Friday and a solo show the other way around. Monday is a interview show. Friday is a solo show, but I'm going to give you a simpler process. So the other part is that every closed loan is an opportunity. So if you look back at your last 20 files, there's probably some interesting stories in there. Oh my God, I thought that was going to die. This was a problem that I was able to solve. Just use that as your fuel for your shows. Just talk about those. Don't use client names, obviously, but you can use that as fuel to create your shows. It's very simple. And then how to design your show. The title matters a ton. I would spend a lot of time thinking about your title because, like I said to you, investing in Calgary real estate, what do you think it's about? Or another one of our agents has got one in Kelowna Real Estate Podcast. What do you think it's about? If you make a name that sounds really cute, but nobody knows what it is, they're not going to, people find us all the time because I Love Mortgage Brokering is like, if you're not into mortgage brokering, you're not going to care about this podcast. And frankly, you probably shouldn't. My brother has made his kids listen to my podcast. I don't know why he did that. My kids have never listened to a single episode. I've never made them endure it because I'm like, they're not going to care. He's like, you don't listen to your uncle. I'm like, Corey, stop. So then design it, really think about the title. It really matters. I think it's very good. One time, many years ago, I wrote a book called How to Rob Your Bank. And I had paid to get some coaching done on writing a book. And it was a guy who wrote a book. And he said, you should spend 80% of your time on the title because it matters that much. Now, I don't know that you need to spend that much time on it, but the reality is the title will really help you or hurt you. So use the 2-show format. So you're going to do a solo show and then cycle in an interview show. So they're going to get 2 of those things going. And then I'd publish bi-weekly. So this is what I would do if I was starting. And you can do that in one afternoon a month. That's like basically every other week. One week, it's going to be an interview show, expand your network. The next one's going to be a solo show. And that's how I put those together. All right. Pro tip, clear beats clever. You're better off to use something that's very clear so that people know what it is. And you don't try to start a business podcast to compete with, Tim Ferriss and Diary of a CEO. You're never going to win. So you're better off to go niche and are very deep in a single topic because you'll get more traction. The reality is that for most people in here, if you got 100 files a year, you're probably pretty happy. Maybe some of you are more ambitious, but you don't need to have a ton of downloads to have a reach with people. That you're not looking for something that's going to have thousands of downloads necessarily. And then you can include your city name or your airport code. What's the airport code here? Why? I don't know this, but everybody here would know this, just like in Kelowna, right? Everybody knows the airport code. So you can use that in the title of the show so then people know what it's about. Because my brother wanted to go with a general title and I pushed him on it. I said, no, man, nobody's going to know what that is. And I'm like, get specific. And his is even more specific because it's investing in Calgary real estate. It's not even just Calgary real estate. So how to execute. We'll make this real simple. Batch record. One afternoon, you can do this. You can record it virtually. I'm going to share with you the tools that I use for it. And, one afternoon, you can easily do the interview and then do the solo show after, or you can do a couple solo shows and then an interview. My town probably has a podcast studio, but there's podcast studios popping up everywhere. You can just rent them. Walk in, do your interview, walk out, and some of them will even do the editing and everything for you. So that's another option. It's going to cost you a little bit more money. I've never edited a single show. I've done 700 episodes, never done a single show. Even at the beginning, I went on Fiverr or wherever it was at the time, and I found somebody that did the shows for me. And I ended up getting a sponsor after 18 months. I know that the guys in Kelowna, the Kelowna Real Estate Podcast, they have a sponsor, which is pretty cool. Small local podcast, but it's media. They've got a media badge, right? That they just had the mayor of the town on their show. Here's what happens. You get this association effect. If I'm the mortgage broker and I'm interviewing the developer in town that's got like 5,000 whatever units, even if I'm not doing business with that person yet, I'm still building this trust and rapport because they see this association that happens. Pro tip, record standing up. Your voice sounds a lot better. You talk a little bit faster. You have more energy. You don't want to be like compressed because if I sit down like this, just doing that, my voice starts to drop and you can hear it. So you make sure you're standing when you record. Tech and tools. So really simple. This is a setup I'd use. You get a Blue Yeti mic. If you want a better mic, I'm going to show a QR code that has the stuff, like the little bit more upgraded stuff that I personally use. But a Blue Yeti mic is all you need, $130. Riverside is the best tool for recording. We used to use Zoom. The problem with Zoom is that who's been on a Zoom call and it gets glitchy, the audio and stuff, because somebody's internet is down. Riverside records on both machines and then uploads them after. So then if one person's having some connection issues, it's got this kind of lag thing that happens. That's one of the things that's great about it. But it also, all the clips I'm seeing on social right now is all being pulled out of Riverside. I don't know how it does it. AI knows what's interesting. That's an interesting clip. It'll create the clip. And then we can put our captions on it and just drop it on social. So this goes how you take long form content. You spend one afternoon, do an interview show and a solo show, and then you probably get 3 to 5 clips per episode. There's a bunch of social content all done in one batch. And the clips are pretty good. They do a pretty good job of it. The other thing Riverside does now is it actually hosts your show. So I had on here this publishing. So then you need to put your show somewhere. And with the podcast, it doesn't actually sit on Spotify or iTunes. That's just like think of it like an RSS feed. So when you click on the link, the show needs to sit somewhere. And I put it on Podbean, but we may move to Riverside because Riverside now does this as well, and it's way cheaper. But I put it on Podbean because on Podbean, you could do something called dynamic ads. So let's say you get 100 shows done, and then you're running a local event for something or a webinar. I could drop an ad on the front of all 700 shows that says, hey, I got an event coming up. Go here, click on this, and then it cuts into the show. And then when that event's gone, I can take that ad off. or I can run it for a period of time. I can put the ad on the beginning, middle, end, all that stuff. I haven't tested this one yet on some of these things, but if you are a bit more sophisticated, I know Podbean works and Riverside is currently testing. The next thing I'd say is record 6 episodes before you even launch, because here's the thing. I recorded 10 before I put one out. I'd heard that most podcasts die at 6. Most people start, they do 6 episodes and then they quit. So I did 10. And the other thing that happens is that let's say you do record an episode and you send it to a friend, they're going to listen to it, but give them something else to consume or they're gone, especially if you're only publishing every 2 weeks. Because if you're publishing every 2 weeks, their chances of getting them back are very slow. The other thing that's worked really well for me is on social, I will do a clip about the episode where it's like, I'll say, hey, in this episode, like I did one with Joel Olson and he had this brilliant strategies that he's using around real estate agents. I'm like, if you're interested, comment pod. We have 50, 60 people or more, 100 people comment on that post. We just point them to the episode. So that short form content points back to the long form content, right? So that's another thing you can do with the social. It works really well, but record a bunch so that they have something to consume, not just the one. And then how do I edit your show? There's 3 ways, DIY. There's the upgraded version. I'm going to share you my link in here in a sec. So the script is like a Google Doc. This is what we're experimenting with right now. Basically, it's like your transcript. You say the word multiple times, you skip on your words, you just delete it and it cuts it out of the audio. It's just editing a Word document, but it fixes the audio at the same time. And then you can also clean it up with Riverside. If you want somebody to do it all for you, you're too busy, you can use somebody on Fiverr. I went to Podfest down in Florida and it was like 1,000 podcasters. I'd never been before. I wanted to go check this out. And Florida's an interesting place. Who's been to Florida? That is definitely a different place, man, different world down there. But that's a whole other conversation. But again, we're testing right now. I have staff that can probably, with the tools, we're going to try it ourselves and see what we can do. But for most people, again, it's pretty inexpensive. I had somebody doing it locally and it was a lot more expensive, like thousands of dollars. But it's a fraction of the cost with Fiverr. If you want to get access to the stuff, you can click on that, take a picture of the tools that we're using, what I recommend. That's my favorite tech stack. All right, so how to cheat on the test. Here's what I'd recommend. Here's your 1-minute cheat today. Pick a title. That's it. You don't need to come up with all the rest of the stuff. Pick a title. I think of it this way. Let's say you walk into the SPCA, you just walk down the aisle and you see all those puppies and you go, oh, I'm going to name that puppy. You're taking that dog home to name it. I'm trying to like psychologically trick you into naming the thing so that it comes to life. You got to start there. And so spend some time thinking that through, make it clear, not clever. Make sure that if you're going to use it a regional type podcast, make sure that people know that so that it's more interesting. And it does not need to have massive downloads for it to be very effective for you. All right, quick recap. And then I'm going to cover some of the quick Q&A and then we'll wrap up here. So select a title, clear beats clever, 2-show strategy. Remember, interview plus solo. You only need to do this 1 day a month, 1 afternoon. And then all you need is a Yeti mic and Riverside and Fiverr if you don't want to do anything or Descript, and you're all set and ready to go. It's very simple. All right, now let's cheat on the test together. And I'm going to do some Q&A on this topic for a couple of minutes. So who's got a question on what I was just shared with you guys? What would I do different? Well, one of the things, and I said this when I was at the EXP conference, is that let's say you're a mortgage broker, get a realtor partner on there. Have 2 of you. Your cost just went by half. You have twice as big of a network. The work level goes down. You know, knowing that now, that's what I would have done back in the day. I didn't do that then, but for sure, that's what I would do if it was me. And I would start solo shows sooner. I didn't do those for years. I didn't realize the importance of them, but they build a lot of trust. Oh, if I would have interviewed realtors, oh, for sure, I probably would be coaching realtors now because you'd end up seeing so many patterns. I'd end up being a coach of, I suspect that's what I'd be doing because I still like training and simplifying things. So I'd probably be coaching realtors. I'd be doing the same thing just with realtors. Good question. So if you want to not just do a mortgage or real estate show, which is fair, because like for some of you, like it may not be that interesting to do that for a long period of time, then make sure that your show, whatever you create, is sponsored by your mortgage company. So I know a guy who had a podcast in Ottawa. It was to do with like bars and music. And he did 200 episodes, 150 episodes, and he liked it, but he made no money from it. It was just a bunch of work. And so he ended up killing it. Nobody knew he was a mortgage broker. They saw him as the bar music guy. I'm like, that's great, but like put something on there so that people know. I know that Adam does a lot of stuff with local sports. You can ask him, but he was saying to me that he's got some months he gets 250,000 views on his content. And it's all about local sports, right? But his local sports is sponsored by his mortgage company. That's how I would do it if I'm going to have something that's not mortgage related. Otherwise, you will likely not stick with it. You know, the last thing I'll say on this, so cheat on the test. When I started the brokerage, I never thought I started brokerage. I always thought, man, that's a terrible idea, like terrible. But I would talk to broker owners and they'd say, what's your best idea, Scott? And I said, do this model just similar to EXP. Do that. I think it's going to kill. And every one of them would get excited. And they say, Scott, this is brilliant. And then they'd come back a day later and say, but I'm going to make less money. The cap commissions, I don't know about this. They'd come back to me and then they wouldn't do it. But they didn't understand the fact that you can build something way bigger, right? So in 2022, we did 265 million in production. Last year, we did 2.8 billion. That's 1,000% growth in 3 years from nowhere. That's you guys. And I'm not that smart. Like, I'm not. I do cheat on the test a lot, though. I have many dumpster fires in my past. You want to ask my ex, she knows about all of them. I have many dumpster fires, a lot of things that didn't work, but I'm willing to always try and be like, let's just see if this works. Let's just try it. Let's experiment. And then the things that work, you keep doing. And if they don't, you let them go, you know? And so again, thank you guys for coming. We're going to be back in the fall. We'll have new speakers and hopefully we see a bunch of you out here. Thank you. Hey, thanks again for listening, and hopefully you found this episode to be inspiring. I know we're going to be doing Broker Talks again coming up in the fall. If you're interested in that, hit me up. We're going to have a link here that you can use in order to get on. We do sell out every year, and it's an awesome time, and we've got some cool things we do. On top of the talks, we also have an amazing experience. So keep your eyes peeled for that. If you're on my email list, you'll definitely get an invite. Thanks for listening. As I always say, there's no problem in your mortgage business someone else hasn't already solved. Your problem is finding the answer when you need it. This podcast is designed to provide some of those answers. Thanks for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.